A girl named Minjin is quietly sitting at her desk, minding her own business, when two girls suddenly walk over to her. One of them dramatically sniffs the air like a police dog searching for evidence, throws Minjin's belongings off her desk, and cruelly tells her to take a shower and wash her smelly clothes. Apparently, bullying people had become their full-time hobby. Minjin wants to slap them across the face, but she is smart enough to stay calm and ignore them. Just then, a boy named Nam-hoon walks into the classroom. Minjin has a secret crush on him, but Nam-hoon is already close to the school's most popular girl, Hairi, who also happens to be Minjin's biggest bully. Knowing she has no chance, Minjin hides her feelings. Later that day, Minjin catches the two bullies secretly vaping in the school bathroom. They are acting as if blowing blueberry-flavored smoke somehow makes them look cool. She decides to mind her own business, but the girls stop her once again. They laugh at her and cruelly say she smells like an old woman. Minjin fires back, saying she smells much better than the vape they are smoking. Her comeback instantly bruises their oversized egos, and they begin hitting her. Before things get any worse, Hairi walks in and orders her friends to stop. She says there is no point bullying someone who is already living such a miserable life. She mocks Minjin's smell and says nobody would ever want to be friends with her. Heartbroken, Minjin returns home. When her father comes back from work, she sadly asks him not to wash his work clothes together with hers because they make her smell like an old man. After hurting her father's feelings, she quietly returns to her room. That night, she stalks Hairi's social media, which eventually leads her to Nam-hoon's profile. While scrolling through his photos, she accidentally likes one of his pictures. Seconds later, she receives a message from Nam-hoon asking who she is. Panicking, she doesn't reply. The next morning, Minjin arrives at school only to discover that her bullies have thrown her physical education uniform into the trash. Clearly, they had way too much free time. With no uniform to wear, she heads toward PE class. But before she gets there, Nam-hoon suddenly hands her his spare uniform. Smiling, he tells her not to worry about the smell of his sweat. The following day, Minjin carefully washes the uniform and returns it to Nam-hoon. By now, Nam-hoon has started to suspect that she is the mysterious girl who liked his photo, but Minjin nervously denies everything. To prove his suspicion, Nam-hoon grabs his phone and sends a message to the mystery account. Seconds later, Minjin's phone vibrates, exposing her lie. Even so, the two slowly begin becoming friends. Unfortunately, Hairi quickly notices them getting closer. You just know the jealousy alarm in her head started ringing. During class, Hairi drags Minjin into the storage room and starts bullying her again. Minjin insists she is not trying to steal Nam-hoon and promises she will never contact him again. But Hairi doesn't care. She kicks Minjin to the floor and says she is furious because Minjin tried to rub her disgusting smell onto her precious toy, Nam-hoon. She then mocks Minjin for growing up without a mother. That insult is the final straw. Filled with rage, Minjin completely loses control and beats Hairi so badly that, for the first time, the self-proclaimed queen of the school remembers she is actually just another student. However, Hairi's father is an extremely rich and powerful man. A parents' meeting is immediately arranged, where Minjin's father, Kim, is forced to kneel and apologize. It's funny how people with money always seem allergic to admitting their own child did anything wrong. Kim doesn't want his daughter to suffer anymore, so he swallows his pride. He begs for forgiveness and even promises to transfer Minjin to another school just to end the conflict. Although Kim manages to calm Hairi's furious father, Minjin completely loses hope of ever receiving justice. For the first time, she begins to resent her own father. She hates that he has no money, no power, and cannot even protect his innocent daughter. Watching him kneel before the people who ruined her life breaks her heart. Unable to face him, Minjin walks away. Just then, she receives a message from Nam-hoon asking her to meet him at the school gate that evening. Meanwhile, Kim waits at home all night because it is Minjin's birthday. He has prepared everything to celebrate with her, but she never comes home. As the hours pass, he grows more and more worried. He rushes to the school, where he finds Nam-hoon with bruises all over his face. Nam-hoon explains that several thugs attacked him, stole his phone, and used it to lure Minjin to the school that night. Kim immediately searches the area. Then he notices a trail of blood. His heart sinks as he follows it to a pile of rocks stained with fresh blood. In that horrifying moment, Kim realizes that something terrible has happened to his daughter. A short while later, Hairi arrives with a street thug to check whether all the evidence has been cleaned up, as if they are cleaning up a messy room instead of a crime scene. Kim confronts them and desperately demands to know where his daughter is. The thug tries to intimidate him and scare him away. Unfortunately for him, he picked the wrong father. Kim's eyes fill with rage as he brutally beats the thug, turning the so-called tough guy into someone who suddenly forgets how to act tough. life. A flashback finally reveals what happened. The thugs had first lured Namhoon into a trap, beaten him unconscious, stolen his phone, and then used it to trick Minjin into coming alone behind the school. There, Minjin is confronted by Hairi and several street thugs. Unlike everyone else, Minjin isn't afraid of Hairi and immediately fights back. For a moment, it looks like Hairi is about to lose again, but one of the thugs jumps in and starts brutally beating Minjin. So much for fighting fair. Still furious over getting humiliated at school, Hairi decides to take her revenge. She grabs a brick and smashes it across Minjin's head. Minjin collapses to the ground as blood begins pouring from the wound. The thugs stop everyone from calling an ambulance. Instead, one of them contacts another gang member and orders him to dispose of Minjin's body, treating a human life like it is yesterday's trash. The gang leader, known as Golden Teeth, agrees to help. Apparently, he owes Hairi's father a favor because he had been summoned to his mansion earlier that morning, only for the meeting to be cancelled without explanation. Golden Teeth throws Minjin into the trunk of his car before driving Hairi back to her mansion. Strangely, before leaving, Golden Teeth warns Hairi not to tell her father anything about what happened. Even criminals know this situation is far worse than they expected. Back in the present, Kim wraps his hands around the thug's neck and squeezes until the thug can barely breathe. Terrified, the thug claims that Minjin simply fell and hit her head. He then reveals that his friend, Minchio, disposed of her body. Kim quietly returns home. He puts on a brand new bulletproof suit. Then he opens a secret compartment hidden beneath his wardrobe and pulls out a mysterious suitcase that has clearly been waiting for this day. He slowly puts on his glasses, stares at himself in the mirror, and makes a silent promise. He will find his daughter, no matter who stands in his way. Meanwhile, Minchio is busy terrorizing an old man who failed to repay his loan. Since the man has no money left, Minchio casually decides to sell the man's daughter, and even her organs, on the black market. Apparently, this psychopath skipped every morality lesson in life. Just then, the doorbell rings. One of the gang members opens the door. Kim calmly walks inside. Seconds later, the entire house turns into a disaster zone. Kim beats the gang members one after another without showing a hint of mercy. While searching the house, he discovers a terrified schoolgirl locked inside a dark room that looks more like an illegal operating theater than a bedroom. Realizing what is about to happen, Kim grabs an axe and throws it straight at the operator, stopping the surgery before it can begin. Meanwhile, Minchio panics and jumps out of the window to escape. Unfortunately for him, Kim had already predicted that move. Outside, sharp steel wires are stretched across the escape route, forcing Minchio to stop before he slices himself into pieces. Looks like the genius forgot to check where he was running. Kim captures Minchio and brutally interrogates him about Minjin. Minchio insists he doesn't know where she is. He explains that he only communicates with the people above him through an encrypted Telegram account that cannot be traced. Just then, Minchio's phone receives a new message. It is from one of Golden Teeth's men. The message simply says they have taken care of Minjin. Kim freezes. His worst fear suddenly feels real. Desperate, he grabs the phone and tries to contact them through the chat. But Golden Teeth immediately realizes something is wrong and permanently deletes the entire conversation, erasing every trace before Kim can find them. At the same time, Hairi nervously searches the internet for news about the discovery of a missing high school girl's body. Nothing matches Minjin. She should feel relieved. Instead, she is even more terrified. After seeing what Minjin's father is capable of, Hairi realizes she hasn't just made an enemy. She has awakened a nightmare. She anxiously asks her father, Gangchan, if he knows what Kim does for a living. But even someone as rich and influential as Gangchan has absolutely no idea who Kim really is. Meanwhile, Kim is arrested by the police after the violent incident. At the station, the officers try to verify his identity through their database, but his file is locked behind a level of authorization they don't have. The officers exchange confused looks. Who exactly have they arrested? At that very moment, Golden Teeth opens the trunk of his car. Inside lies Minjin, motionless and covered in blood. He assumes she is already dead. But then, Minjin is still alive, barely breathing, but alive. Just then, Kim's phone suddenly starts ringing. Since he is handcuffed inside the police station, an inspector checks the caller ID. His expression instantly changes. It's your daughter. Kim's eyes widen in shock. Without hesitation, he rips himself free from the handcuffs, throws two officers aside as if they weigh nothing, grabs the inspector by the throat, snatches the phone, and answers the call. But before he can hear Minjin's voice, the call suddenly disconnects. At this moment, Kim finally regains a little hope. If his daughter's phone was active, then there is still a chance that Minjin is alive. The only problem is finding her before it's too late. Kim goes to meet his old friend, Hansu, who now runs a taekwondo studio. Kim explains that his daughter has been kidnapped and begs for help. Without hesitation, Hansu agrees. He walks over to the emergency water switchboard, opens it, and secretly pulls out a hidden car key. Just then, several South Korean Secret Service agents storm into the building. Leading them is the director of the S&D department, a dead deadly assassin known as the Silent Killer. Since Kim is a North Korean fugitive who has been secretly living in South Korea, the Silent Killer has spent years trying to capture him. Unfortunately for the agents, Kim has much bigger problems today. He and Hansu quickly beat the agents, escape the building, and speed away in a heavily modified car packed with hacking equipment. After several minutes of tracking, Hansu finally locates the last signal from Min-jin's phone. The signal leads them to a large mansion crawling with gangsters. Kim marches straight to the entrance and demands to meet the boss. One skinny thug with long braids, who weighs about as much as a school backpack, decides to act tough and block Kim's path. Big mistake. Kim grabs the thug by the braids and yanks out a huge chunk of his hair. The thug instantly forgets all about acting like a gangster and starts screaming in pain, while everyone else silently decides they don't get paid enough for this. Kim demands to know where his daughter is. No one has an answer. The terrified braided thug quickly volunteers to take Kim to the boss. Inside, Kim notices something that instantly catches his attention. The gang boss has Min-jin's phone sticking out of his pocket. More importantly, it has Min-jin's heart-shaped keychain attached to it. Kim charges forward, knocking aside every thug who gets in his way before calmly standing in front of the boss. He points at the phone and asks where he got it. Instead of answering, the idiot boss unlocks the phone, looks at Min-jin's wallpaper, and smirks. He shamelessly claims he spent the previous night with Min-jin and only took her phone because he thought Kim might accept him as his future son-in-law. At a time like this, he actually thought that was a good joke. Kim immediately punches him so hard that the joke factory shuts down. After receiving several more punches, the boss suddenly remembers how to tell the truth. He admits he has never even met Min-jin and completely made up the story. A flashback reveals what really happened. The braided thug had bought Min-jin's phone from a homeless man and handed it to his boss. The boss searched through the phone, hoping to find something scandalous. Instead, he found nothing but a few innocent selfies and a call history almost entirely filled with calls from Kim. That heartbreaking discovery makes Kim realize something. Min-jin didn't even have anyone else to talk to. Her father was the only person she could rely on. For a brief moment, Kim lowers his head, realizing just how lonely his daughter must have felt. But this isn't the time to cry. He asks the braided thug where the homeless man was found. The thug immediately tells him. Just then, a North Korean agent suddenly appears and points a gun directly at Kim. Gunfire erupts. Kim instantly ducks beneath the bullets while Hansu dives behind a wooden table with him. Before the North Korean agent can finish them off, two South Korean agents, Young Sang and Mr. Lim, suddenly arrive and attack the assassin. Kim already knows both men. He quickly tells them his daughter has been kidnapped and that he cannot stop now. Without waiting for permission, he walks out and continues the search. On the way to find the homeless man, they pick up their third friend, Park. As soon as he gets into the car, Park starts asking how Min-jin could have been kidnapped. Kim cuts him off. There isn't time for explanations. They soon find the homeless man. He insists he never stole the phone. Instead, he found it in a trash bin after a large man with a ponytail stepped out of a white BMW and threw it away. Hansu immediately hacks into nearby CCTV cameras. After tracing the white BMW through several security cameras, he begins hacking its live location. The process takes several tense minutes. Meanwhile, Golden Teeth and his gang drive the white BMW to a deserted seaport. Believing Min-jin has already died, they prepare to get rid of the body once and for all. But the moment they leave, something inside the plastic body bag moves. Min-jin slowly opens her eyes. Using every bit of strength she has left, she crawls out of the bag. She is alive. Barely. As Kim races toward the location, the silent killer makes his move. A bomb placed on the road suddenly explodes, flipping Kim's car through the air. Hansu crawls out of the wreckage and stays behind to hold off the pursuing agents, buying Kim enough time to steal the silent killer's jeep. Kim slams the accelerator to the floor. Nothing matters anymore except reaching his daughter before she dies. Meanwhile, Gang-chan finally learns that his own daughter, Hairi, attacked Min-jin. For a second, it seems like he is angry, but not because an innocent girl was nearly murdered. He coldly tells Hairi that if she really wanted Min-jin dead, she should have simply asked him to handle it instead of doing it herself. That single sentence explains exactly why Hairi grew up into the monster she became. Back at the seaport, Kim finally finds the abandoned white BMW. Certain he is close, he begins searching for both the owner and his daughter. At the same time, Min-jin has unknowingly crawled into an industrial freezer. The freezing temperature of -30 degrees Celsius slowly drains the last bit of warmth from her body. Shivering violently, she watches as the freezer door slowly begins to open. Terrified, she hides behind a stack of boxes, hoping it is her father. But instead, Golden Teeth walks into the freezer. At that exact moment, outside the warehouse, Kim comes face to face with two of Golden Teeth's gang members. Her heart begins pounding as she rushes to shut the freezer door before he can force his way inside. The heavy door slams shut just in time, but Golden Teeth instantly realizes that Min-jin is still alive. A cruel smile spreads across his face as he quickly calls out to the rest of his gang for backup, only to discover that his men are already being beaten mercilessly by Kim. The ponytailed thug is completely terrified of Kim. Watching his teammates get knocked down one after another, he becomes convinced that Kim has been sent by Gangchan to eliminate them all. Fear completely takes over his mind, and without thinking, he blurts out that Min-jin is locked inside the freezer. He even claims that she is probably already dead by now, hoping the information will save his own life. The moment Kim hears those words, his expression changes completely. Shock turns into burning anger as he realizes Min-jin's life is in immediate danger. Desperate to stop him, the ponytailed thug grabs a live, exposed electrical wire and tries to electrocute Kim. However, his reckless plan backfires instantly. The current surges through his own body instead, causing him to scream in agony before collapsing to the ground after electrocuting himself. Without wasting a single second, Kim charges forward. Another thug panics and tries to run away, but Kim catches him before he can escape. Just then, several more members of Golden Teeth's gang rush into the warehouse after hearing the commotion. Outnumbered once again, Kim quickly throws the captured thug into one of the large storage containers and locks him inside, making sure he cannot interfere. Then, without showing the slightest fear, Kim turns around and prepares to face the rest of the gang by himself. At the same time, Min-jin continues to shiver uncontrollably inside the freezing storage room. The temperature has dropped well below zero. Golden Teeth mockingly tells her to come out before she freezes to death. Pretending to sound sincere, he lies and promises that he will let her go if she opens the door. For a brief moment, his words spark a tiny glimmer of hope in Min-jin's heart. She desperately wants to believe him, but that hope quickly disappears. She remembers how these same men brutally murdered the innocent security guard without the slightest hesitation or reason. If they could kill an innocent man so casually, they certainly wouldn't hesitate to kill her as well. Even as her body grows weaker from the unbearable cold, Min-jin refuses to give up. Deep inside, she still believes that her father will come to save her. That single thought becomes the only thing keeping her conscious. Meanwhile, after defeating several more gang members, Kim finally frees the thug trapped inside the storage container, determined to force him to reveal exactly where Min-jin is before it's too late. However, just as the thug begins leading Kim toward Min-jin's location, the two of them are suddenly struck by a speeding car. The impact throws them across the ground. The driver calmly steps out of the vehicle, revealing himself to be the dangerous North Korean agent, Gang-sung. The moment Kim sees his face, he realizes this is no ordinary opponent. Even so, with his daughter's life hanging by a thread, he has no choice but to fight. The two clash in a brutal hand-to-hand battle, each landing powerful blows. During the fight, Gang-sung reveals that he is the younger brother of one of Kim's old military friends. However, he believes Kim betrayed and murdered his brother years ago. Kim is stunned by the accusation. Between punches, he tells Gang-sung the truth, that his brother was once one of his closest friends and that he died in a tragic accident during a mission. But Gang-sung refuses to believe a single word, convinced that Kim is only trying to cover up his crime. Blinded by years of hatred and revenge, he attacks with even greater fury. Meanwhile, inside the freezing warehouse, Min-jin continues to shiver as the freezing temperature slowly drains the warmth from her body. Just as she begins to lose hope, she thinks about her father. Tears fill her eyes as she imagines how lonely Kim would be if she died here all alone. She refuses to let that happen. Gathering every last bit of strength she has left, Min-jin forces herself to stand. Outside, Golden Teeth suddenly notices several of his injured teammates crawling toward him. Confused, he demands to know what happened. One of them, barely able to speak, warns him that Min-jin's father has arrived and is searching the entire warehouse for his daughter. Before Golden Teeth can react, he suddenly hears the loud sound of the freezer door opening. He confidently walks toward the freezer. Suspicious, Golden Teeth steps inside to search for her. The room is eerily silent. Suddenly, he hears the sound of a piece of metal falling onto the floor somewhere behind him. Realizing it could be a trap, he follows the noise anyway, believing that a frightened teenage girl could never outsmart him. That arrogance proves to be his biggest mistake. The moment he turns the corner, Min-jin suddenly swings a heavy metal rod with all the strength she has left and smashes it into the back of his head. Golden Teeth collapses to the floor in pain as Min-jin angrily calls him a fool. Without waiting to see if he gets back up, she immediately sprints out of the freezer, desperately searching for a way to escape the seaport. As she runs through the warehouse, she suddenly notices 3 vehicles filled with armed men entering the area. Panic immediately takes over. She quickly hides behind stacks of cargo, trying to stay completely silent, while the gang members spread out to search for her. At the same time, Kim finally reaches the freezer and desperately searches every corner for his daughter. Instead, he finds Golden Teeth lying unconscious on the cold floor beside an empty yellow bag. His heart sinks for a moment, fearing he has arrived too late. Then, as he continues searching, he notices a message scratched onto the icy surface. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm scared." The words pierce straight through his heart. Yet instead of despair, Kim feels an overwhelming sense of relief. The message means only one thing. Min-jin was alive long enough to escape on her own. His daughter was still fighting. Filled with renewed determination, Kim rushes out of the freezer and begins searching the massive seaport. Meanwhile, Min-jin quietly slips past Gangchan's men, doing everything she can to avoid being seen. Kim repeatedly screams her name across the warehouse. To improve his view, he climbs to the top of a stack of of shipping containers. From there, he finally spots Minjin in the distance as she struggles to climb over a tall fence surrounding the port. The moment he sees her, his face fills with joy and relief. She is alive. Minjin, he shouts at the top of his lungs, but the distance is too great. She cannot hear him. After jumping down the other side of the fence, she continues running without looking back. Kim immediately climbs down and chases after her with everything he has. Minjin races through the dark, rain-soaked forest until she finally reaches a lonely highway. Exhausted and terrified, she desperately waves at every passing vehicle, begging someone to stop and help her. One car after another drives past without slowing down. Meanwhile, Gangchan's men arrive at the freezer and discover that Golden Teeth is still alive. Furious that he failed to dispose of Minjin's body as ordered, they brutally pull out his gold teeth as punishment. Despite the unbearable pain, Golden Teeth laughs and mocks them, revealing that Minjin is still alive and has escaped. Realizing the situation has become even worse, Gangchan's assistant immediately orders every available man to spread out and find Minjin before Kim reaches her. Following the trail his daughter left behind, Kim eventually reaches the highway. However, by the time he arrives, Minjin has completely disappeared from his sight. Frantically searching the area, he suddenly notices a nearby CCTV camera. An idea immediately comes to his mind. He calls SMD team member Sang-a and begs her to hack into the camera system to track Minjin's location. In return, Kim promises that once his daughter is safe, he will surrender himself without resistance. Sang-a reports everything to the SMD director, the infamous silent killer. However, instead of simply rescuing Minjin, the director sees an opportunity. He decides that finding Minjin first and taking her hostage would be the perfect way to force Kim into submission. After hacking the CCTV network, Sang-a traces the vehicle that picked up Minjin. Unfortunately, neither Kim nor Minjin realizes the horrifying truth. Believing she had finally found someone willing to help, Minjin unknowingly climbed into a car that was taking her straight toward her school bully, Hairi. Silent Killer instantly orders his men to scatter and search for the black van. Despite his strict orders, Sang-a secretly messages Kim and informs him that Minjin is inside a black van on National Highway 87. She also tells him the vehicle is registered under Johak Construction Company. Right then, Hansu arrives on his tiny scooter. Kim jumps onto the back and tells Hansu to floor it, but the poor scooter gives everything it has and still accelerates like it's asking the engine for permission first. At dawn, Minjin is taken to Gangchan's mansion. She tries to call Kim, but one of the bodyguards politely stops her and asks her to make the call later so she doesn't become suspicious. Confused, Minjin slowly walks inside the mansion, where she is greeted by two maids. They offer her fresh clothes and ask her to wash up before meeting their master. A few minutes later, Minjin finally meets Gangchan. He calmly asks how she ended up on the highway. Minjin claims she woke up inside the freezer and ran for her life. However, Gangchan immediately suspects she's lying because he already knows Kim was also at the warehouse searching for her. He also knows that Minjin only pretended to be asleep inside the van and heard his voice during the trip. Minjin is terrified once again. Despite fighting so hard to stay alive for her father, she has somehow ended up right back inside the lion's den. She desperately tries to run away, but the two guards quickly drag her back into the room. Gangchan coldly claims that he loves his daughter and fulfills all her wishes, and unfortunately for Minjin, his daughter's current wish is her death. The scary part is that Gangchan says all of this while calmly preparing a poisonous injection. As if that wasn't unsettling enough, he believes his daughter didn't even do anything that terrible by wanting to get rid of someone she hates. As a supportive father, he wants to help her fulfill that wish. He slowly walks toward Minjin while revealing he already has the perfect story prepared for the public. That Golden Teeth kidnapped Minjin outside her school, and both of them mysteriously disappeared together. Convenient, if you ignore literally every detail. Just as he's about to inject the poison into Minjin's body, the doorbell rings. It's Silent Killer and his team. Their request to enter is immediately denied, so Silent Killer responds in the most reasonable way possible, by driving his car straight through the locked front gate and into the mansion. The guards rush over and try to stop him, completely unaware of who they're dealing with. Gangchan quickly orders his men to hide Minjin in the basement. Afterward, he uses his powerful connections and calls the deputy chief of national security. However, he quickly learns that the men who just stormed his house aren't ordinary police officers he can simply boss around over the phone. Silent Killer calmly looks around the house before entering the living room. He notices an oddly placed chair that doesn't match the sofa set, while Gangchan is standing alone in the room. That tiny detail is enough for him to realize Gangchan is hiding a guest, someone of lower status, like Minjin. He casually sits down and politely asks Gangchan to bring out the girl he's hiding. Gangchan takes Silent Killer lightly and refuses. That instantly annoys Silent Killer, who calls him a shithead right inside his own mansion like he owns the place, then tells him to bring out Minjin while he's still asking nicely. Suddenly, Gangchan's men attack the SMD officers. Their leader foolishly believes he can scare them off simply because they're trespassing on private property. Just then, Silent Killer receives a phone call from an angry minister ordering him to immediately leave Gangchan's mansion. Meanwhile, Kim and Hansu arrive outside. They notice several SMD department vehicles parked around the mansion and immediately become cautious. With no choice left, Silent Killer orders his team to get back into their vehicles and leave the property. At least, that's what it looks like. Instead of driving away completely, his men split into different locations around the area and secretly keep the mansion under surveillance. Meanwhile, Silent Killer heads off to meet Sang-ae and Mr. Lim. To everyone's surprise, Min-jin suddenly steps out of Sang-ae's car alive and unharmed. We then flash back to see what really happened. While Silent Killer was distracting Gangchan inside the mansion, Sang-ae and Mr. Lim quietly sneaked in unnoticed. They searched the entire house before discovering the secret basement, where 2 bodyguards were guarding the room. Sang-ae casually shoved Mr. Lim in front of them as bait, proving once again that having friends is dangerous. As the guards approached the terrified dry cleaning shop owner, Sang-ae attacked from behind and took both guards down one after another using an electric baton. Afterward, they entered the room and found Min-jin. She was completely shocked to see Mr. Lim, the friendly owner of the neighborhood dry cleaning shop. There wasn't enough time to explain why her local laundry guy had suddenly become a secret agent, so they quickly freed her and escaped the mansion together. Silent Killer takes Min-jin into his car and heads toward SMB headquarters. Min-jin becomes worried because she doesn't recognize a single man or woman sitting around her. She tries to call her father, but the female agent beside her gently asks her to trust them before putting her to sleep with chloroform. Silent Killer fears Gangchan's men will come after them, so he orders several agents to continue watching the mansion. Suddenly, Kim appears and silently strangles one of Silent Killer's men with a steel wire. The other 2 agents notice something is wrong and walk over to investigate. Kim quickly ambushes both of them and learns that Min-jin has already been rescued and is being transported to SMD headquarters. Kim steals their vehicle and uses the walkie-talkie to contact Min-jin. Instead, Silent Killer answers the call and calmly tells Kim that his daughter is safe with them. Kim immediately warns Silent Killer not to hurt Min-jin and promises to surrender himself once he sees his daughter is safe. Unfortunately, Silent Killer has spent far too long chasing spies to trust one just because he sounds sincere. Instead, he tells Kim to come to SMD headquarters if he wants to see his daughter. Silent Killer soon arrives at headquarters and escorts Min-jin inside. At the same time, we discover Hansu secretly hiding underneath Silent Killer's car the entire journey, proving that scooters aren't the only questionable transportation choices in today's episode. Moments later, a massive number of special forces arrive at SMD headquarters. Mr. Lim is horrified by the sight of so many highly trained combatants. Sang-ae explains that Silent Killer knows Kim will eventually launch an all-out assault on the headquarters to rescue his daughter, so he's preparing for the biggest showdown yet. When Min-jin wakes up inside an empty interrogation room, she looks around and realizes she's tied to a chair. A camera is pointed directly at her. Suddenly, Silent Killer's voice echoes through a speaker as he calmly asks whether she knows anything about her father, Kim. According to Min-jin, Kim is nothing more than an ordinary middle-aged office worker who lives a completely normal life. Silent Killer gets straight to the point. He reveals that Kim is actually a secret North Korean spy who has been hiding in South Korea for years. The reason he remains hidden is because if North Korea ever discovers he's still alive, they'll stop at nothing to eliminate him, since he knows far too many of their secrets. Basically, Kim's resume is a lot more interesting than Min-jin thought. Silent Killer then asks Min-jin to explain everything that has happened to her. She tells him about getting into a fight with Gangchan's daughter, Hairi. During the fight, Min-jin hit her head and blacked out. The next thing she remembers is waking up inside a freezer at an abandoned warehouse. After somehow escaping, she was kidnapped once again by Gangchan's men. At this point, the poor girl has been kidnapped so many times that she's probably expecting loyalty points. Just then, the deputy chief of national security arrives at SMD headquarters. Silent Killer immediately realizes Gangchan must have called in a favor, so he quickly orders his men to hide Min-jin before the deputy chief can find her. Meanwhile, Hansu is secretly infiltrating the headquarters through the ceiling air ducts. From above, he notices the officers escorting Min-jin through the building before locking her inside an isolated room. As Min-jin sits there hopelessly, she suddenly hears Uncle Hansu whispering from inside the ventilation shaft. He quietly tells her to stay calm before opening the vent. Min-jin drags a bed underneath the opening, climbs onto it, and Hansu pulls her into the narrow air duct. The two carefully crawl through the ventilation system, searching for a way out. However, Min-jin is completely lost in thought after learning the truth about her father. She quietly asks Hansu if he already knew Kim was a spy. Hansu simply smiles and replies that Kim may have once been a spy, but now, he's a father. At the same same time, the deputy chief storms into Silent Killer's office in a fit of rage. He demands that Min-jin be handed over immediately. Silent Killer completely loses his patience, calls the deputy chief a stupid bitch right to his face, and warns him that if he hands Min-jin over to Gang-chan, then both Gang-chan and the deputy chief will end up dead at the hands of Agent Kim, who is desperately searching for his daughter. Suddenly, the emergency red sirens begin blaring throughout the headquarters. Hansu tries to escape with Min-jin, but before they can get very far, Silent Killer and an entire squad of special forces surround them. Min-jin freezes in fear. Hansu quietly tells her that on the count of 3, she must run toward the emergency exit without looking back, no matter what happens. Silent Killer prepares to shoot Hansu, but before he can pull the trigger, loud music suddenly blasts through the hallway. Park bursts onto the scene with a grenade launcher and fires straight into the wall, blowing a massive hole between himself and Hansu. He then drives a car directly into the building like parking regulations simply don't exist. Hansu quickly covers Min-jin's eyes while Park throws a flash grenade, temporarily blinding the special forces. A smoke grenade follows, filling the hallway with thick smoke. Park immediately opens fire on Silent Killer and his men while Hansu and Min-jin rush toward the car, only to discover the doors are locked. Not exactly the best time to realize the driver forgot to unlock the car. Silent Killer quickly notices that none of Park's bullets are actually hitting anyone. He realizes Park is firing blanks and is simply trying to intimidate them. The moment the trick is exposed, Silent Killer and his men return fire with real bullets, forcing Hansu and Min-jin to take cover behind the car. With nowhere left to run and completely surrounded, Hansu and Min-jin decide they have no choice but to surrender. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoes through the hallway. It's the deputy chief, shouting at everyone not to touch Min-jin. Everyone turns toward him and is shocked to discover a razor-sharp steel wire tightly wrapped around his neck. Standing high above on the rooftop is Kim, calmly pulling the wire tighter with every movement. Min-jin finally sees her father. Unable to hold back her emotions any longer, she bursts into tears. Kim looks down at her and calmly says, "Don't worry, I'm here now." Kim then gets down from the building while holding the chief of national security hostage and threatens the Silent Killer and his men to lower their weapons. When they don't listen, the chief shouts at the soldiers to lower their weapons, but the Silent Killer orders his men to hold their positions. He is enraged that the deputy chief of national security is asking them to let a fugitive like Kim escape. He orders his men to shoot Kim dead, but the soldiers refuse since they can't harm the deputy chief of national security. They drop their weapons instead, which only makes the Silent Killer even angrier. He pulls out his gun to shoot Kim, but Park immediately points his rifle at the Silent Killer and even fires a warning shot to prove the bullets are very real this time, not some movie prop with a "trust me bro" warranty. Realizing he's completely outmatched, the Silent Killer reluctantly throws away his gun. As Park hands his rifle to Hansu, Min-jin runs toward Kim with tears in her eyes and hugs him from behind. Kim keeps holding on to the chief of national security, knowing the danger isn't over yet. Park then lines up the Silent Killer and his men in a group before placing special bombs around them that detect both sound and movement, instantly triggering an explosion if anyone tries to be the class clown. Park doesn't let the opportunity go to waste and decides to play a deadly version of Red Light, Green Light, famously seen in Squid Game, which leaves Hansu looking like he'd rather file for retirement than play another children's game. Min-jin, Kim, Hansu, and Park escape in the chief of national security's car, but their path is blocked by Sang-ae and Mr. Lim. They point their guns at Kim and the others, questioning why Kim still hasn't surrendered even after finding his daughter. Kim explains that he first needs to make sure Min-jin is completely safe, then he promises to come back and surrender. Mr. Lim trusts Kim and lowers his gun, followed by Sang-ae, Kim, Min-jin, and the others get back into the car and arrive at the heavily barricaded main entrance. They threaten to kill the chief of national security, forcing the guards to open the gate. Since they no longer need to keep him hostage, they casually toss him aside and drive away in his own car. Definitely not the retirement plan the chief had in mind. Later, inside the car, Min-jin finally speaks with Kim after their long life and death struggle. She worries about him as she notices bruises covering his body. Kim apologizes for taking so long to find her, but Min-jin now understands that Kim genuinely cares about her and would fight the entire world to keep her safe. She hugs him tightly and begins to cry as she remembers how horribly she had treated him because of the bullying she suffered at school. As they drive onto the national highway, 3 large trucks suddenly surround their car from the left, right, and front. A group of men quickly rushes in and bolts the car doors shut within seconds. Suddenly, a forklift comes from behind, lifts the entire car into the air, and places it inside the front truck. Park tries to calm Min-jin, assuring her not to worry because they'll all be getting out of this alive very soon. Inside the truck, Park decides to climb out of the car through the sunroof, but immediately regrets it when the car's AC vents begin releasing sleeping gas, knocking everyone unconscious. The truck is driven to the middle of nowhere to dispose of the 4 of them. One of the men enters the truck and finds Min-jin, Kim, and Hansu asleep inside the car, while Park appears to be sleeping outside inside the vehicle. However, the moment the truck's rear door is opened, the car's engine suddenly roars to life and drives straight out of the truck, revealing that Kim and Hansu had only been pretending to be asleep the entire time. They get out of the car, and Gangchan's men surround them from all sides. Kim and Hansu quickly deal with them while Gangchan's assistant, Nam, searches the car for Minjin, only to discover that she isn't there. He immediately heads back inside the truck. There, he finds Park lying on the floor and notices Minjin's legs sticking out of a small storage compartment inside the truck. Just as he's about to kidnap Minjin, Park suddenly wakes up. Nam doesn't take Park seriously and smashes him in the head, but he is shocked to see Park remain completely conscious after such a brutal blow, one that would normally knock most people out for hours. Park simply laughs it off, making Nam question whether he just punched a human or a brick wall. Before dealing with Nam, Park gently moves Minjin into a more comfortable position. He then stands up and tells Nam that he's not just fast, he's strong too. Suddenly, the truck begins moving, but Park doesn't lose his balance for even a second. He lands a powerful punch that sends Nam crashing onto the floor. At the same time, Kim and Hansu notice the truck driving away. Realizing that Minjin is still inside, Kim immediately sprints after it with everything he has. He charges forward at full speed, runs up onto higher ground, and launches himself onto the roof of the moving truck like gravity just decided to take a coffee break. Kim carefully crawls toward the driver's door, grabs the driver, and takes control of the steering wheel. Meanwhile, Park gives Nam the beating of a lifetime, teaching him one unforgettable lesson: never mess with Minjin or her family unless you enjoy collecting hospital bills. Kim drives the truck back to the scene, where Hansu is almost finished dealing with the remaining men. It leaves Hansu a little frustrated since Kim and Park always seem to show up right after he's done cleaning up the entire mess by himself. Poor guy can't even enjoy a victory pose. At the same time, Hairi calls her father, Gangchan. Confidently, Gangchan tells her not to worry because he has already taken care of both Minjin and her father. However, his confidence disappears the moment he learns that his top assassin, Nam, has been brutally beaten. So much for hiring the best. But Kim isn't done yet. He decides to eliminate the problem at its source, so he drives straight to Gangchan's mansion. He tells Park and Hansu to stay in the car while he marches inside alone and single-handedly defeats the entire security team as Gangchan watches in disbelief. At this point, the security guards are basically taking turns donating themselves to Kim. When Kim finally enters the living room, he warns Gangchan to stay away from his daughter. Instead of being frightened, Gangchan acts impressed by Kim's incredible fighting skills and even offers him a job as his personal assassin for 100 million won per month. Gangchan then tries to justify his offer by claiming that only rich people can raise children with love, while ordinary office workers only raise their children in poverty and suffering. It is easily one of the dumbest speeches he could have given to a father who had just fought an army to save his daughter. But then the arrogant billionaire makes the biggest mistake of all. He threatens Kim by saying that with just a single phone call, he can make Minjin disappear forever. Until that moment, Kim wasn't sure what he should do with this delusional rich man. But after hearing those words, he finally realizes there is only one way to guarantee Minjin's safety. Gangchan has to go. Kim suddenly grabs Gangchan by the collar and drags him around the room. Gangchan struggles desperately to break free, but Kim doesn't hold back. He lands several powerful punches that leave Gangchan questioning every life decision that led him to picking a fight with Minjin's father, and probably why he was even born in the first place. Refusing to give up, Gangchan grabs a sharp, 1,000-year-old antique sword and swings it at Kim. Unfortunately for him, owning an expensive sword doesn't magically unlock sword skills. Kim effortlessly dodges the sloppy attack, grabs Gangchan, drives a few crushing punches into his stomach, and finishes with a devastating blow straight to his face. At this point, Gangchan finally realizes he picked a fight with the wrong people. He desperately crawls toward the mansion's exit while Kim calmly walks behind him, giving him absolutely zero hope of escaping. Outside, Kim is just about to finish Gangchan once and for all when Minjin wakes up and stops him. She pleads with Kim to spare Gangchan's life. Kim tells Gangchan that if he wants to live, he must beg Minjin for forgiveness. Gangchan immediately takes the opportunity like the obedient little lapdog he has suddenly become, and repeats the exact same words Kim had once used while begging him to forgive Minjin. Minjin tells Gangchan to turn himself and his daughter, Hairi, over to the police before returning home. However, she is heartbroken to see SMD officers already waiting outside the house to arrest Kim. Kim doesn't care about his own fate. Instead, he insists on celebrating Minjin's birthday, even though it's already long overdue. Minjin feels guilty that Kim is being arrested because he risked everything to save her. She begs him to run away and start a new life, but Kim knows that's not something he can do. Minjin promises that she'll keep waiting for him in that very house, no matter how long it takes. Kim finally gives her the expensive shirt he bought as her birthday present, while Minjin gives him a small photograph of herself so he won't miss her quite as much. After sharing one last dinner with Min-jin, Kim walks outside and peacefully surrenders in the presence of a high-ranking military general, who promises to ensure Min-jin's safety. Han-soo and Park are also arrested by the SMD department for helping Kim. Han-soo and Park are locked up in a regular prison, while Kim is placed inside a specially designed high-security cell to make absolutely sure he can't escape. As if normal prison walls were going to stop this guy. Soon, several men enter the cell and inject Kim with a powerful sleeping drug. Days later, Kim wakes up inside a dark room, tied to a chair. Standing before him is a mysterious man holding a burning coil. It is there that Kim learns he has been secretly deported back to North Korea. Meanwhile, Gang-chan recovers from his injuries and immediately begins plotting his revenge, determined to get rid of Min-jin once and for all. Apparently, getting beaten half to death still wasn't enough to teach him common sense. The North Korean agents torture Kim for months, hoping he'll reveal every tiny detail he knows about the South Korean government. But Kim refuses to say a single word, patiently waiting for the perfect chance to escape. Eventually, one agent decides to give Kim a high-voltage electric shock. Unfortunately for him, that brilliant idea has the life expectancy of a snowflake in a volcano. Kim pretends to pass out for a few minutes, then suddenly grabs the agent's hand and flips the power switch. Kim somehow stays conscious despite the massive shock, but the agent isn't nearly as tough. Before he can recover, Kim bites into his neck, killing him instantly. Kim then uses brute force to break free from his handcuffs and storms out of the room, only to find the chief army general and the silent killer calmly waiting for him in an air-conditioned room. They applaud Kim for refusing to reveal even a single piece of information about the South Korean government. Now that Kim has proven his loyalty, the general gives him a dangerous mission: protect a high-ranking North Korean defector during the interstate talks between North and South Korea. In return, Kim will finally earn his freedom and get to live peacefully with his daughter under brand new identities. Kim agrees immediately when his daughter is mentioned, but he doesn't trust the silent killer to protect Min-jin. Instead, he asks the general to release his friends, Park and Han-soo. The general agrees. However, instead of simply setting them free, the officers inject both men with sleeping drugs, dump them in the middle of nowhere, and don't even bother removing their handcuffs. Apparently, making life difficult is their favorite hobby. Han-soo eventually wakes up and finds the handcuff keys lying on the ground. He unlocks himself first, but when he sees Park sleeping like a lazy dog, he casually throws the keys away and walks off, leaving Park behind. After walking for nearly half an hour, Han-soo reaches a small convenience store, where he learns they've been abandoned 250 miles away from Seoul. To make things worse, they don't even have enough money to get back. Meanwhile, Hyori's father, Gang-chan, falls into depression after being brutally beaten by an ordinary man. His pride is shattered, and revenge becomes his only goal. He meets an assemblyman, who reveals that neither Kim nor Min-jin has any official record in South Korea. It's as if they never existed. Hearing this makes Gang-chan even more terrified, and he looks like he's about 2 seconds away from wetting himself. That night, Kim arrives at the seaport to meet a North Korean fugitive. 3 men step off a boat and flash their lights twice as a signal. Kim responds by flashing his car's headlights twice. The fugitive gets into Kim's car, but the moment he removes his hood and starts speaking, Kim is stunned. The fugitive is none other than the former Director General of the North Korean Army, a man now wanted by his own country. Kim burns with rage because he desperately wants revenge, but he has no choice. To keep his daughter safe, he must protect the very man he hates. The next morning, the silent killer drives Min-jin to another location. Worried about her father, she keeps asking if Kim is alright, but the silent killer and his men refuse to answer. Finally, a female officer tells Min-jin they can't reveal anything. After staying silent for so long, the silent killer finally speaks, assuring her that Kim is still alive. If he successfully completes his mission, she'll see him again very soon. At the same time, Gang-chan meets the Deputy Chief of National Security, who is still furious about how Kim humiliated him. After Gang-chan offers him a large amount of money, the deputy chief reveals that Kim isn't an ordinary man but a North Korean secret agent who has been living undercover in South Korea for years. He also reveals that Kim has been assigned to protect the runaway Director General. Since Gang-chan knows he doesn't have the power to confront Kim himself, he comes up with another plan. He secretly meets the North Korean president, who has arrived in South Korea for interstate trade talks. Gang-chan tells him that he knows the exact location of their runaway Director General, along with a man protecting him, Agent Kim. But Gang-chan has one condition. He offers the North Korean president 3 gold bars and asks for only one thing in return. He wants to be the one who personally finishes Kim. Meanwhile, back at the hideout, Sang-ae and Mr. Lim are monitoring the CCTV cameras when they notice several suspicious vehicles heading straight toward the house. Realizing the North Korean agents have finally tracked them down, they immediately alert Kim. Knowing they only have minutes before the place is surrounded, Kim quickly comes up with an escape plan. As the agents silently sneak inside the house, Kim and his friends appear to flee in Sang-ae's car. Believing they've caught caught their targets, the agents immediately chase after the vehicle without thinking twice. Unfortunately for them, their IQ clocks out before they do. Kim was never inside the car. Instead, he quietly slips back into the house where he had been hiding the army general all along. Sang-e's car was nothing more than a decoy to lure the agents away from the real target. Once the path is clear, Kim escorts the army general out through another route and refuses to reveal his new hiding place to anyone. However, instead of leaving the city immediately, Kim heads to Park's secret hideout, where Park and Hansu are already waiting. The moment the army general steps inside, he immediately recognizes both Hansu and Park. The two men had been a constant pain in his neck during previous encounters, always interfering with his operations whenever they crossed paths. Ironically, seeing familiar faces actually puts him at ease. If those two are protecting him, his chances of staying alive are probably much better. But that brief moment of relief doesn't last long. Before anyone can settle in, the silent killer suddenly arrives at Park's hideout with an entire squad of armed men. The team quietly enters the building and surrounds the place. Without showing the slightest emotion, the silent killer informs Kim that he has already failed his mission. According to his orders, both Kim and the army general are now under arrest. A flashback then reveals why everything changed so suddenly. After meeting the North Korean president, Gang Chan secretly convinces him to pressure the South Korean government. He tells the president to meet with South Korea's prime minister and demand the immediate return of both Agent Kim and the runaway army general. Otherwise, North Korea will reconsider its future trade relations with South Korea. Faced with political pressure, the South Korean prime minister reluctantly agrees to the demand. To make sure Kim doesn't resist, the silent killer reveals Min-jin locked inside a small white prison cell at the SMD headquarters. The message is crystal clear. If Kim refuses to cooperate, his daughter will suffer the consequences. With Min-jin's life hanging in the balance, Kim has no choice but to surrender. The silent killer and his men immediately hand both Kim and the army general over to the North Korean agents without putting up any resistance. The agents then transport the two men deep into a forest. There, they appear to execute the army general before turning their attention to Kim. As promised, they hand Kim over to Gang Chan so he can finally take his revenge. Gang Chan couldn't have asked for a better opportunity. Ever since Kim humiliated him, revenge has been living rent-free inside his head. Kim, however, is furious for a different reason. He reminds Gang Chan that he promised to hand him over to the South Korean police instead of taking revenge into his own hands. Gang Chan doesn't feel even the slightest bit guilty. Keeping promises has clearly never been one of his talents. He grabs a pistol, repeatedly smashes Kim across the face with it, and then points the gun directly at his head. But just when he has everything he wants, Gang Chan once again proves that common sense isn't included in his job description. Instead of pulling the trigger right there, he decides it would be more satisfying to execute Kim somewhere else, unknowingly giving his greatest enemy another chance to survive. Suddenly, Kim acts purely on instinct and takes down the North Korean agents one by one while Gang Chan cowardly hides behind a nearby car, waiting for someone else to do the fighting for him. Kim keeps pushing forward until he finally runs out of bullets. Just when things start looking hopeless, Park and Hansu arrive at the perfect moment to back him up and help eliminate the remaining agents. With the fight finally over, they capture Gang Chan once again. However, instead of killing him, Kim immediately demands to know where the army general is. Deep down, he knows the North Koreans never actually executed the general. A man with that much value is far more useful alive than dead. Gang Chan instantly drops his tough act and starts begging for mercy like a cockroach that somehow survived another stomp. In exchange for sparing his life, he promises to lead Kim directly to the army general's location. Having no better option, Kim agrees. Gang Chan takes Kim and his team to his luxurious hotel, where the North Korean president is secretly holding the army general. But getting inside won't be easy. The entire hotel is crawling with North Korean agents disguised as bizarre suits. Knowing there's no way they can storm the building through the front entrance, Kim grabs Gang Chan by the collar and forces him to reveal a hidden emergency passage that leads directly to the president's private office while avoiding every surveillance camera in the building. Gang Chan reluctantly gives in and reveals the secret route. However, another problem quickly appears. None of them know which room the North Korean agents are using to hide the army general. Hansu immediately volunteers to infiltrate the hotel's surveillance room and locate the general through the CCTV system. Park points out that simply finding the army general won't solve everything. Even if they locate him, escaping from a heavily guarded hotel without getting caught will be nearly impossible. Kim has already thought several steps ahead. He explains that they'll secretly smuggle the army general out inside the hotel's laundry truck. Mr. Lim confidently claims that laundry operations are his specialty. He even knows the exact delivery schedule. Every evening, the laundry truck arrives at 7:20 p.m. and leaves again at 7:30 p.m., giving them only 10 minutes to get the army general into the truck before it drives away. It's risky, but it's the best chance they've got. With almost no time left, everyone quickly prepares for the mission. Mr. Lim disguises himself as one of the hotel's laundry workers. Hansu squeezes himself inside the trunk of Gangchan's luxury car. Meanwhile, Kim, Park, and Sang-ae disguise themselves as Gangchan's personal bodyguards. Since everyone in the hotel recognizes Gangchan, the disguise allows them to pass through the main entrance without raising any suspicion. Gangchan then leads them toward the hidden passage. The escape route is protected by multiple security layers, including secret passcodes, fingerprint scanners, and restricted elevators. Gangchan is the only person with access to every security system, making him the perfect guide, whether he likes it or not. After making it through the passage, the group finally arrives inside Gangchan's private office. They spread out a detailed map of the entire resort, and carefully go over every step of the operation. To begin the next phase, Park places a call to room service. At that exact moment, Gangchan secretly receives a text message from his personal bodyguard, informing him that his men are already in position and ready to attack Kim's team whenever he gives the order. Gangchan quietly puts away his phone without replying, deciding to wait for a better opportunity. A few minutes later, a male and female hotel employee arrive outside the office with a room service cart. The moment they step inside, Park and Sang-ae quietly overpower both employees, tie them up, and take their uniforms. With their disguises complete, the operation moves into its most dangerous phase. Before leaving, they tightly tie Gangchan to a pillar to make sure he can't warn anyone. Meanwhile, Hansu hides himself inside the room service food cart while Park and Sang-ae casually push it through the hotel's hallways toward the surveillance room. After silently taking out the security officers inside, Hansu gains full control of the CCTV system. As he carefully scans through dozens of camera feeds, one particular scene immediately catches his attention. Several heavily armed North Korean agents are dragging a large sealed bag through one of the corridors before carrying it into a highly secured room. Judging by the way they're guarding it, Hansu realizes the army general is almost certainly hidden inside that bag. Kim takes a different route and quietly makes his way to the rooftop. After securing a rope, he carefully rappels down to the 5th floor and slips through a window into the room where the army general is being held. Even before entering, he can hear the general shouting at the North Korean agents, insisting that he never revealed a single North Korean secret to the South Korean government, no matter how much they threatened or tortured him. Inside the room, the North Korean president sits calmly across from the army general and offers him one final deal. If the army general wants to leave the room alive, he must hand over access to the massive fortune he secretly hid in Macau years ago. Instead of showing fear, the army general bursts into laughter. He mocks the president, pointing out that his greed is even bigger than his authority. Furious at being ridiculed, the president loses his temper, pulls out his pistol, and points it directly at the general's head. Before he can pull the trigger, Kim silently sneaks up from behind and knocks the president unconscious with a single strike. However, there isn't a second to waste. Only 5 minutes remain before the laundry truck leaves the hotel. At the same time, Sang-ae reports over the radio that the head of hotel security has realized something is wrong. The surveillance team is beginning to notice missing guards and unusual activity throughout the building. Knowing the control room is about to be searched, Sang-ae immediately escapes. Kim quickly helps the army general to his feet and rushes him toward the laundry area. But by the time they reach the lower floors, only 2 minutes remain before the truck departs. Realizing his prisoners are escaping, the leader of the North Korean agents reveals his final trump card. He activates a supercharged EMP device, instantly cutting power to the entire hotel. Within seconds, every light goes out, elevators stop moving, security cameras shut down, and the entire building is plunged into complete darkness. The blackout throws everyone into chaos. But while everyone else is struggling to see, Park seems to be having the time of his life. Trapped inside a locked elevator with several North Korean agents, Park turns the pitch-black elevator into a personal boxing ring, beating the agents one after another while sarcastically asking if anyone else wants a turn. Meanwhile, Mr. Lim has a much bigger problem. Following the original schedule, he has no choice but to let the laundry truck leave the hotel. If it stays any longer, the entire operation will be exposed. Kim desperately rushes toward the laundry loading area with the army general, hoping to make it in time. But when he finally arrives, the laundry truck is already gone. For a brief moment, Kim realizes their carefully planned escape may have completely fallen apart. Meanwhile, Hansu and Park finish dealing with the remaining North Korean agents on their side of the hotel and return to Gangchan's office. To their surprise, Gangchan is no longer tied to the pillar. Using the gold lighter he always carried with him, he had patiently burned through the ropes until he finally freed himself. It turns out he wasn't completely useless after all, just slightly less useless than usual. Gangchan calmly tosses his mobile phone onto the table in front of Park and Hansu. A video is already playing on the screen. Their expressions instantly change. Park's daughter and Hansu's young son are both tied to chairs in an unknown location, crying and desperately begging for someone to save them. In a single moment, the mission is no longer just about rescuing the army general. Now it's also a race to save their own families before it's too late. Kim and Sang-ae quickly load the army general into a golf buggy and race through the resort, hoping to escape before the North Korean agents can catch up. But the agents refuse to give up, chasing them relentlessly through every corner of the property. Kim speeds into a long underground tunnel and, just before reaching the exit, throws a grenade behind them. The explosion collapses part of the tunnel, blocking the pursuing agents and buying them a few precious seconds. Just as they think they've escaped, another obstacle appears. Standing in the middle of the road is Gang-sung, the same North Korean agent who had been hunting Kim ever since his older brother was killed. However, everything has changed. Gang-sung has finally learned the truth. It wasn't Kim who ordered his brother's death. It was the army general sitting inside the buggy. Consumed by revenge, Gang-sung immediately raises his gun and points it at the general. Kim instinctively steps in front of the army general, shielding him with his own body. Even though Kim despises the man, he can't allow him to die. If the army general is killed now, Kim's promise to protect him will be broken, and Min-jin's safety will be placed at risk. Kim calmly tells Gang-sung to lower his weapon. He promises that once this mission is over, he'll personally give Gang-sung the chance to settle the score. For now, the army general has to stay alive. After a tense moment, Gang-sung reluctantly lowers his gun and lets them leave. A few minutes later, Mr. Lim finally arrives with the laundry truck, allowing everyone to leave the area before more agents arrive. Unfortunately, escaping one disaster only leads them straight into another. Kim suddenly receives a call from Hansu. Hansu urgently tells him to come immediately because Gang-chan has kidnapped both Park's daughter and Hansu's son. Kim's expression instantly changes. Without telling Sang-ae or Mr. Lim what's really happening, Kim quietly gets out of the truck, climbs into another vehicle, and drives away alone. Following the directions, Kim arrives at an abandoned warehouse where Gang-chan has prepared one final game. Inside, Park, Hansu, and the kidnapped children are trapped inside a large MMA fighting arena surrounded by steel fencing. Gang-chan forces Kim into the cage before locking the gate behind him. Standing safely outside the arena, Gang-chan makes his twisted offer. If Park and Hansu don't kill Kim, both of their children will die. The two men are completely frozen. Kim is their friend, but their children are everything to them. Seeing their hesitation, Kim understands exactly how much they're suffering, so he makes the decision for them. Without warning, Kim throws the first punch, forcing Park and Hansu to defend themselves. Even after exchanging blows, either of them can bring themselves to kill their friend. Watching his plan fall apart, Gang-chan completely loses his patience. He snatches a shotgun from one of his bodyguards and fires several blasts into the arena floor, screaming at Park and Hansu to finish Kim. Left with no other choice, the two men continue attacking Kim. Together they beat him so badly that he eventually collapses to the ground, barely able to stand. Gang-chan smiles, convinced he has finally won. But just like every other time, his ego switches off his common sense. Wanting to enjoy his victory, Gang-chan walks right up to the cage and begins mocking both Kim and Min-jin. The moment he gets close enough, Kim suddenly grabs him through the steel fence. Park and Hansu immediately charge forward and deliver a powerful kick that breaks open the damaged gate. The fight instantly turns around. While Kim holds onto Gang-chan, Park and Hansu rush the bodyguards, taking them down one after another before rescuing their son and daughter. With the children finally safe, Kim wastes no time. He immediately leaves to rescue Min-jin. Before doing that, however, Kim decides to fulfill the promise he made to Gang-sung. He tracks down the recovering army general at the hospital, captures him, and personally hands him over to Gang-sung. Now, the man who ordered Gang-sung's brother's death must finally face the consequences of his own actions. The following morning, Kim makes one incredibly expensive phone call to an old Yakuza friend. Kim hires him to destroy Gang-chan's business empire and political influence so that Gang-chan will never again have the power to threaten Min-jin. The plan works almost immediately. A government seizure team raids Gang-chan's company, freezing its assets and uncovering years of corruption, fraud, and illegal dealings. Within hours, every major news channel is exposing Gang-chan's crimes to the entire country. As Hyori watches the news, she begins trembling in shock. Soon, her social media accounts are flooded with thousands of hateful comments and insults. The public turns against her overnight, pushing her even closer to the edge than she already was. After Gang-chan is finally discharged from the hospital, another familiar face appears. Golden suddenly ambushes him and stabs him with a knife, wanting revenge for everything Gang-chan has done. Somehow, against all odds, Gang-chan survives yet again. At this point, surviving seems to be the only thing he's actually good at. Not long afterward, the South Korean military decides that Kim has become too dangerous to remain alive. The next morning, Min-jin is watching television when a breaking news report suddenly appears. According to the broadcast, Agent Kim has been found dead near a riverside. Min-jin is completely devastated and believes every word of it. But moments later, Kim quietly appears right in front of her. The news was nothing more than a cover to help him disappear forever. Kim promises Min-jin that he will never leave her again. Overwhelmed with happiness, Min-jin rushes forward and hugs her father as tightly as she can. Together, they return to the S&D headquarters, where the silent killer provides both of them with brand new identities so they can finally begin a peaceful life. A few days days later, Minjin returns to school to complete her transfer. Before leaving, she meets Nam-hoon, the boy she has quietly liked for a long time. The two sit together one last time. Nam-hoon sadly asks if she's really transferring because he'll miss her. He even asks if they can stay in touch over the phone. Although she wants to say yes, Minjin knows that keeping contact could put everyone in danger. With a gentle smile, she politely declines. Instead, she removes her old name tag, places it in Nam-hoon's hand as a keepsake, and quietly walks away to begin her new life. And that's where this video ends. Like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.